Baptista with us. Hi, Jaden. He's from TakeShape. He's a developer advocate there and a caffeine-powered JAMStack developer. Jaden's all around Twitter. If you want to follow him, he's also, well, you can tell more, Jaden, but you've been sort of leading the JAMStack Philly, which has been a great event. I think it was last week, right? And there's some cool stuff going on that side. So maybe you want to tell some more about it. And Jaden's going to be talking about TakeShape and this API mesh world, and we're going to see what it's about. So if you want, Jaden, take it away.
Thank you. See, this, I think it's going to stop your screen sharing, so apologize. Go. Can you see my screen? All good? I'm just going to take that as a yes. Yeah. So I have my whole camera set up here and everything, so I apologize for it being a little wonky today. Still working out my desk situation because we just moved. But what I want to talk to you today is kind of an idea that stems a little bit from what Anthony was talking about. He was talking about the JAMStack going full stack. I wanted to kind of hone in on the idea that he mentioned of the API mesh, though. And there's a reason for that, because it ties into all of the other tools that he was mentioning. One particular point I loved was the bigger the Lambda function gets, the more pointless it was to use the Lambda function in the first place. You can end up creating the Lambda lith. I had never heard the term for it, but that's the perfect word for it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about one common way that we get our Lambda functions too big and too complex. And that's a way that an API mesh solves. So usually I start this talk with something really provocative, like you're lazy or something, to get people riled up. But you know, when you think about it, in reality, the JAMStack is premised on laziness. That's kind of our whole thing. In the very beginning, when Matt coined the term, it was basically a response to things getting super complicated. He'd been using all these other tools and it's getting really hectic, and he just said, let's go back to basics. Let's start over, go back to static websites. Maybe we use a little tool, a little sprinkling of whatever to build the static website, but overall it's going to be static. And that was kind of the point. We are inherently lazy, and that makes us better developers. But when you think about the initials, the things that the JAMStack stands for, the J and the M are really easy. JavaScript, super easy now. ECMA has made it really nice to work with, and a lot of the frameworks we use make it very intuitive to build a website out of. Maybe you're a fan of 11t and you use a little sprinkling of JavaScript there, or you want to go full out with something like Next or React more specifically. The M markup is also incredibly simple because now we have Markdown. Makes the M super easy. In fact, when I was building sites freelance, I would give sites off to the clients and say, here, you learn how to use Markdown, because we can do that now. That part's even easier. But the A, that's the kicker. The A is incredibly difficult still. APIs are still very difficult, very complex. They're often inconsistent. And, you know, while we pride ourselves on creating simple, easy to comprehend solutions to these complex problems, we haven't quite yet adopted the easy, simple, easy to comprehend solution to API inconsistency. And that's called an API mesh. I apologize. My computer's over here and I've got another screen over here, so you see me moving around a little bit. But the API mesh stitches together external services, similar to the gist that Anthony gave a little earlier. You take all your different services, all the things that you were going to use, all the things that you were going to pull into a single Lambda function and create this monstrosity of a Lambda function. And instead, you plug them into an API mesh. Then that API mesh spits out a single GraphQL endpoint. So then you can just ask for the data you need and only the data you need. It's not like REST APIs where you ask for a haiku and get back war and peace. In this scenario, you just ask for what you want, you get it. It could be from anywhere. You don't have to care about the source, and all the information can stay where it belongs. Like payment information doesn't have to be in Stripe and also your database, it can just be in Stripe. I'm proud to be representing TakeShape. They're the ones that sort of invented the idea several years ago. They've been in the JAMStack world for like 10 years now, since it really started. But the concepts will transfer over if you're using something similar. Like Anthony mentioned, StepZen is a good alternative. And I didn't know about GraphQL portal, but that one sounds cool too. A while back, probably late May, something like that, I was trying to write an article combining Stripe and MailChimp, which is a pretty easy, task. Like on our little task cards, it said write an article combining Stripe and MailChimp. Like that was that was the whole directive. It was pretty easy sounding, but it was not easy. it was incredibly difficult. Actually, I don't consider myself a bad developer. I think I'm pretty all right at it. But it was way harder than it needed to be because Stripe and MailChimp handle REST differently. Like, for example, here's one logical inconsistency with REST off the top of my head. REST defines what to do with a certain resource. If you want to get it, you use the get method. If you want to post it, use the post method, right? There's different methods. And they organize the API with that. But Stripe gives you the opportunity, the ability to get one customer or a list of customers. So what do? REST would probably tell you that you should have two endpoints for that, /customer and /customers. But that seems kind of ridiculous and a little confusing for users. And so what Stripe did instead is use the get parameter for this, and not exactly how you're supposed to do it, but Stripe ended up doing it better, at least in my opinion. It's kind of a weird case to run into, but every API is going to handle little things like this differently. So you end up with kind of this mess of inconsistency, especially in what they return to you. MailChimp was returning a lot of things in uppercase, where the key values were uppercase, and they were nested real down deep. So like to get a single customer, MailChimp's solution was we're always going to return a list of customers, and you just have, if you want the one customer, you just have to get the first one in the list. So that was another decent solution. But that meant you had to drill down into this JSON response just to find the one field you wanted. And it was not named well. It was all in uppercase, and it was a bear to work with. But you might, in your project, be doing a lot more than just Stripe and MailChimp. You might be doing, I just have a couple examples here, using Snipcart for inventory, Auth0 for authentication, obviously. Personally, I like to use SendGrid for transactional emails, just my thing. Maybe you're using a completely different set of APIs, who knows? But it can get really complex very quickly. Like I said, just had 2 APIs in my project and it's already insane. So if you're the type of person who's using 12, I don't want to be you. But there is a better way. There is an easier way of dealing with this complexity. The API mesh lets you plug all of those things in. Think of it like a switchboard, where instead of making a single call to each API, like a phone call, think of it like a phone call. Instead of making a phone call to ask 12 different people a single question, you can get them all on a group call, ask them all at once, and have them read out their answers in unison. That's kind of what we're doing here. And that means that when you consume APIs the old-fashioned way, it's going to be complex and verbose, like I said. But when you use an API mesh, it's going to be really simple, really quick to write, because you only have one API to talk to. Just like in the example, you only have the one phone call to make. You're just talking to everybody through the same phone call. Another problem with consuming APIs the old-fashioned way is that it's difficult to see what's going on at a glance. You end up with that, what'd you call it, lambda lith? I need to remember that term. That's awesome. But you end up with such a monstrosity of a program that it's very tough to see what's going on in each section of it. You can't just be like whoosh, down the code and be like, oh, that's exactly what I need to edit to fix this tiny little bug that nobody could find. The bugs that nobody could find are caused by this kind of thing. But when you're using an API mesh, you only have the one query, just the one request. And so the process of what's going on, completely unobscured. There's a query, which details exactly what data you're going to get out of it. And then there's the little boilerplate for the API request, which is point and shoot. That's a couple hundred lines of code in like 10 lines of code, including the query, which is verbose already. One thing that I had to deal with a lot that I hated is when you're using APIs, you have to be careful of security. I'm really bad at cybersecurity, like incredibly bad at it. So I try my best to never have to deal with it. But that means that my choices are often limited. Like a lot of these APIs, you have to be careful of what you're passing to them, because you can break something, you can cause a problem. Excuse me. But with API mesh, you're kind of giving it a middleman, someone to do all of the work for you in terms of type validation, in terms of like pushing all of this content and data together without everything exploding. That's something that I really appreciated, because I, like I said, really hate security. Now I don't have to worry about it. And I also mentioned that every API is going to implement that REST spec slightly differently, or God forbid, some of them are still on XML APIs. I was just like 2 months ago or something, I was working for a freelance client. They wanted me to use Zillow's API, which had just recently been, well, not recently, but it had been deprecated. And then they just recently removed it altogether because the client was not too keen on making changes until everything broke. So we ended up in a situation where we were trying to figure out how Zillow's API worked so that we could dissect our program, but it was an XML API. So I had no idea what was going on. It was a mess. But GraphQL, on the other hand, is standardized. It works the same way everywhere. You learn it once, you got it down. You only have to deal with those pesky, inconsistent APIs one time when you're plugging them into this switchboard API mesh. You don't have to deal with that inconsistency ever again. It's like you just learn enough to teach the API mesh what to do, and then you're done. So here, I can show you a little tidbit here. Let's see if I can move this around. There we go. This is TakeShape. You guys see the TakeShape screen?
Yes.
I'm looking at awesome. So the idea down here is we've got 3 different things that are going to help us out here. Get to the right tab. I'm just in a TakeShape project because a simple way to demonstrate the API mesh. But like I said, these concepts will apply to any API mesh. You have, first of all, services. These are the places that you're contacting, right? Like the people on the other end of that phone call. So in this case, Stripe. Stripe is a good example of a service. I like to use that as an example. You just literally, you teach it everything it needs to know. Give it its name, a slug, just to make sure that there's no variable naming conflicts. Namespace, same deal. The endpoint. Stripe's API is at api.stripe.com. So that goes there. And then your authentication type and your authentication credentials. Now, I've already done all of this, so I'm just going to click cancel because I don't need to redo all of it. But the point stands. You just type all that in, you click save, and boom, you're done. We actually have some of these pre-built for you, so you don't even have to do all of that. Is it connect service? Here's some. You can connect to GraphQL API, Open API, BigCommerce, Netlify, a bunch of different stuff. At the time when I made that article, we didn't have a MailChimp integration yet. So now that's way easier. Thank goodness. But yeah, it's still, a lot of these APIs are still kind of tough to work with. So I'm glad for this technology. Anyway, second thing that we use to keep track of all of our data in an API mesh is shapes. You see down here, I have, I have a bunch of shapes. This is probably an easier way to see it. Up at the top left, you see I'm highlighting them. There are a bunch of shapes: asset, category, collection, homepage, product, site settings. Those are just some things that will validate a field for me. So think of it like Typescript interfaces is a good example. I don't know how many people are familiar with TypeScript interfaces. The idea is you just pass it an object, a JavaScript object, in this case, JSON, just JavaScript objects. And then it just validates each field. So make sure that this key, the value is a string. Make sure that you have this key and the value is an integer, stuff like that. We can do that with shapes. Like, take a look at this product shape. This is for a e-commerce store site that I was messing with on my weekly streams. Come visit those. They're on twitch.com or twitch.tv/Jaden Baptista. I built this on the stream, and basically what we have is a name, the slug that goes in the URL, a description, a product ID. Notice that's from Stripe. Notice also there's no price data in here, where otherwise there would be price data, because this is our database row for this item. We've got an image, some color options, size options, whatnot, and a Boolean down there at the bottom. So basically all of this is being validated for me from the TakeShape CMS, right? But that's just one of the sources that I plugged in here. So like name is going to be a string, slug is going to be a string, whatnot. So I can actually show you, we have similar ones like for the home page here. You can actually go in and edit the schema of it. It's of the shape itself to show the validation. So like down here on the home page, we have a title and it's going to be a string without any new lines. So a single line, stuff like that. You can set all of this up as shapes, and then you can just trust that the data you're passing around is validated, at least type-wise. The last little bit that we need to know is queries. That's kind of the important one. Actually, no, shapes are probably more important. It's in the name. But queries are super important as well. Like, let's go down here and find get product list. Here's one. I'm just going to run it real quick. We have this API Explorer that makes this super easy. Just going to get rid of some unnecessary data so that it doesn't confuse us. There we go. Don't you love live demos in talks? They're awesome. Super fun for the person giving the talk. So basically, I sent the endpoint. The endpoint is actually down here in the corner, if you're interested. I sent it this GraphQL query with my API key. And what it did is it went to the TakeShape CMS. That's one of our sources, one of our services, essentially, and got the description, the name, the product ID, the sizes, the slug, and the sold out for each product. Now let's see here. I might have taken this out by accident. There is one more thing that I wanted to show you with this query. Is it here? Here, hold on a second. Okay, let's see if that works. Yeah, okay, I remembered how to do it. It wasn't in the default query, but I sent it this GraphQL query and I added the price data key on it right here. Why can't I click it? There we go. And what it actually did is it reached out to Stripe with this product ID and got me the price from Stripe. Just right in the same query. So again, just demonstrating the idea that it's stitching all this stuff together seamlessly. So we don't actually have to know that this data is coming from Stripe. It's stored there where it's supposed to be, where it is relevant, but we don't actually need to care about that from the standpoint of our developer. We can just ask the API mesh, and as long as it's all set up properly, it'll just do its thing and get you whatever data you're asking for, despite whether it's in this source or that source or whatever. So that, oops, my dock is moving all around again. There we go. That is pretty much, I'm getting a phone call. That's pretty much all it. The API mesh is working as it's supposed to, and it was incredibly simple to set up. I've been on air for 20 minutes now, so I'll probably end up wrapping up right about now. I appreciate you guys humoring me with this. But I mean, it took me like what, 5-10 minutes to set up, to demonstrate all of it. It's really easy. And now I'll never have to look at those services again, except for when I give this talk the next time. So sorry. One other thing I just wanted to mention before we finish up is that a lot of sites are built with WordPress, 40% actually. So now you can have kind of the best of two worlds by adding a WordPress plugin that'll let you do GraphQL stuff with the data stored in WordPress. So that's at wpgraphql.com. Really love it. It's made a lot of people's lives easier. But TakeShape.io is the tool that I've been demonstrating. We're at TakeShape.io on Twitter. And this is me, at Jaden Guitarman on Twitter. I'm Jaden. Let me know if you have any questions.
I do have one. First, thank you for sharing all that. So curious about that WordPress thing. So you can connect the WordPress API to TakeShape.
Yep.
Is that right?
As long as you use that GraphQL plugin, it'll expose a GraphQL API with all the data from WordPress. And then you just pipe that into TakeShape as one of your sources. You don't need to use a TakeShape CMS. You just can. It's there for convenience.
Right. And sort of a question related to that. When you were editing things in the TakeShape CMS, once you change something there, is it also updating things on, let's say, the WordPress CMS? Like, is it like syncing two-way?
So you can set it up to go both ways. There are mutations as well that are just kind of the flip side of queries. That's all handled by GraphQL though, and by the WordPress plugin itself. So TakeShape can send the query or the mutation, and as long as the plugin supports data flowing the opposite direction, then yeah, you can do pretty much whatever you want with that. Do all the CRUD operations.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to see. I haven't tried TakeShape yet. Another question for you. Is there like a developer free tier that we can use to
Yeah,
try it out?
of course. The developer tier, the free tier, is incredibly generous. I've actually, despite working for TakeShape and demonstrating this like almost every day, I've never paid for the developer tier or the next tier up. That's for like enterprise stuff. So if you're building a big project, it might be still cheap, but you'll have to pay a little bit. But for almost everything, you're on the free tier. So
That's pretty cool. That's super cool. It's great to see that we can connect so many things to it. I remember the first time that I saw TakeShape in one of the first JAMStack comps, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And now it's grown so much.
Yeah, it's grown a lot. I remember I'm writing an article at the moment about how I got into DevRel, and it kind of followed TakeShape's journey. And we're at the point now where like the TakeShape that I'm representing is far and away better than the one that first sold me on the idea. So
Nice.
to think that we've improved since then is mind-blowing. I'm really excited to see what people create with it.
Yeah, that's good. I think that what was good was the concept. As you saw, they pretty
Yeah.
much created the idea of doing all this. So yeah, but like if you go from there, like the concept is just great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Your cat is content and happy, but mine is trying to get out of the room, scratching at the walls. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing.